We are, of course, following the breaking news out of Utah right now. And I just want to sort of clarify where we are right now. There was back and forth about whether a suspect, a person of interest, or a subject had been apprehended. There was an individual in custody. Just moments ago, we got information from FBI Director Kash Patel that that person has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement, which would lead one to conclude that the suspect, whoever pulled this off, whoever committed this heinous act, is at large presently at the moment. We are, of course, going to continue following this situation. I want to bring in Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of the state of Connecticut. He has, of course, experienced horrific gun violence in his own state and is author of the book, The Violence Inside Us, A Brief History of an Ongoing American Tragedy. Senator, I wish that we did not have such regular occasions to speak in the aftermath of something, a wrenching and horrible act of violence, but we are here again. Your thoughts about what we have seen happen today?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I think about is Charlie Kirk's family, having spent way too much time with the sons and daughters and mothers and fathers of those who have fallen from gun violence. There's just no words to describe what they're going through right now. Nobody should have to live through this horror. But I'm certainly thinking about the quickening pace of political violence in this country. In an extraordinarily short amount of time, you've seen the murder of state legislators in Minnesota, attempted assassinations of the president of the United States. Obviously, January 6th still lives in our very present memory. And we've got to have a conversation about how we draw a line here, and we can't afford to argue who's more at risk, the right or the left. The fact of the matter is the shots are being fired at political figures, whether they are Republicans or Democrats. There has been a permissiveness about political violence, and I do think the President of the United States has to answer for the way in which he's created that culture of permissiveness. But there have been elements of the left who have lionized and celebrated violence as well. And this is a moment for everybody to assess where we are and recognize that our entire democratic experiment is going to crumble if people don't believe that they're safe when they express their political views.
Yeah, that's very foundational. I just want to note here, and we've been noting it tonight, that we don't yet know who did this. We don't know their motives. And it very well may be, as was the case, I think, in the wake of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, that those motives or politics were illegible, inscrutable, something of a black box. And that's part of the context here. Although the point that you make there, I think, part of the reason we've seen such universal and unanimous condemnation, immediate, heartfelt, unanimous, is precisely because I think everyone understands that we feel like we're on the precipice of something that is not the sort of democratic society that we all believe in and want to have.
Yeah, that's right. And we do not yet know the motive here. I did hear the governor of Utah, somebody that I generally trust, call this a political assassination. Maybe he has information that the rest of us don't. But yes, and I think this requires a really deep dive into how we've arrived at this moment. It is about the celebration of violence that happens, the rationalization of violence, but it's also about a country where political identity has become really ahistorically central to the way in which we wake up every day and find meaning and purpose. And that's because a lot of other healthier identities, family identity, work identity, local identity, have become less accessible. So we look today at the left or the right as the enemy. And it's worth us stepping back and understanding how we reclaim a sense of ourself that maybe is not so rooted in politics, which is inherently oppositional. And sometimes that oppositional force sort of becomes so overwhelming that it treads into violence.
There's also the security concerns, which I think haunt so much of public life now. I mean, there's that period after 9/11. I was thinking about this recently. I was, visiting a family member in a hospital and waiting online to go through a metal detector and remembering that I lived in a time when
For
You could walk into a
Republicans,
hospital,
the
you could
current
walk into an office
trajectory
building, right?
raises
All that went away
concern.
after
Donald
9/11.
Trump right now is
We
upside down in some
are used to
polls
essentially
on
airport
immigration.
security
Yeah, and
in
that's
any building we enter. I and every political figure and public figure and author and professor and across the political spectrum of ideology has sat underneath the tent with a microphone to talk to a bunch of people. That's like an essential part of what a free and open society is, and we can't let that go away.
Correct. And, we also don't want to feel as if we are sort of living in a variety of different prison experiences.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I have opposed there being, armed guards at my children's schools. And that is primarily because I actually think it breeds a sense of fear in children that is, largely irrational. As much as this has now become an epidemic, you are still more likely in this country to be, killed by a falling object than you are in a mass shooting. There's far too many mass shootings, but I don't think we want to turn our churches and our schools and our shopping malls and our movie theaters into boarded up encampments.
Yeah.
So I think it's better that we get at the underlying sources of this violence. And there's some specific conversations we have to have with respect to political violence, but all of it has an underlying story about the easy access of guns. And if we just were more careful about who has access to powerful weapons in this country, we would have less need to board up a lot of our public settings.
Yeah, and it seems obviously this was a gun that was used to carry off this awful murder. Senator Chris Murphy, thanks for sharing your thoughts tonight.
Authorities are investigating a shocking act of violence in Utah, where conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was fatally shot. Initial reports indicated a person of interest had been taken into custody, but FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed the individual was interrogated and released, leaving the perpetrator at large. The incident has sparked widespread condemnation and renewed discussions on political violence and gun control in America. In the aftermath, Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut with personal experience of gun violence tragedies in his state, shared his reflections. As the author of a book examining America's ongoing struggle with violence, Murphy expressed deep sympathy for Kirk's family, noting the indescribable horror faced by those who lose loved ones to such acts. He emphasized that no one should endure this nightmare. Murphy highlighted the alarming escalation of political violence in recent times. He pointed to a series of disturbing events, including the murder of state legislators in Minnesota, attempted assassinations of the President of the United States, and the lingering shadow of the January 6th Capitol riot. "We've got to have a conversation about how we draw a line here," he urged, stressing that the focus should not be on which political side is more at risk, the right or the left, but on the fact that shots are being fired at figures from both parties. He attributed this surge to a growing permissiveness toward political violence. Murphy called out the president for contributing to this culture, but acknowledged that elements on the left have also lionized and celebrated violence in some instances. "This moment," he said, "demands self-assessment from all sides to prevent the crumbling of the nation's democratic foundations. Our entire democratic experiment is going to crumble if people don't believe that they're safe when they express their political views," he warned. While motives behind the Utah shooting remain unclear, Murphy noted the Utah governor's description of it as a political assassination, suggesting possible insider information. He cautioned against jumping to conclusions, recalling that in previous incidents, such as the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, the perpetrator's politics were often inscrutable. Delving deeper, Murphy explored societal factors fueling this violence. He argued that political identity has become disproportionately central to Americans' sense of self, overshadowing healthier affiliations like family, work, or community ties. As these traditional identities erode, people increasingly view the opposing political side as the enemy, sometimes escalating opposition into violence. It's worth us stepping back and understanding how we reclaim a sense of ourself that maybe is not so rooted in politics, which is inherently oppositional, he reflected. Security concerns were also a key theme. Murphy drew parallels to Post, 9/11 changes, where everyday spaces like hospitals and office buildings adopted airport-like security measures. He lamented the potential loss of open public forums, essential to a free society, where people can gather under tents with microphones to discuss ideas. Yet, he resisted turning public spaces into fortified zones. Opposing armed guards in schools, he argued it instills irrational fear in children, despite the epidemic of mass shootings. You are still more likely in this country to be killed by a falling object than in a mass shooting, he pointed out, while acknowledging the unacceptable frequency of such events. Instead of barricading churches, schools, shopping malls, and movie theaters, Murphy advocated tackling root causes. Central to this is addressing the easy access to powerful weapons. If we just were more careful about who has access to powerful weapons in this country, we would have less need to board up a lot of our public settings, he stated. The weapon used in Kirk's murder underscores this point, as firearms remain a common thread in America's violence narrative. The incident has prompted unanimous, heartfelt condemnations across the political spectrum, reflecting a shared recognition that the nation teeters on the edge of abandoning its democratic ideals. As investigations continue, leaders like Murphy call for introspection and reform to curb the cycle of violence threatening